Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is for all of you juniors out there because I know that it's ACT season for juniors, and this video is something that you can watch literally an hour before you go into the testing center and hopefully get a better score than you would have if you didn't watch it. I have unfortunately taken the ACT 5 times, but I ended up getting a super score of 32 on the I promise I'm somewhat credited to make this video. This entire video is going to be purely strategy based, and even if you don't know any of the questions, you will still get some right, hopefully, because these strategies are definitely proven to work. If you're like 2 weeks out from the ACT or you're gonna take it like a month in the future, I would recommend getting all of these books. It is the master book, so it has 6 practice tests, and it also has tips, I think, for all of the sections. Also individual books. My score went up so much from the books. I am going to be going through every single section of the ACT and giving you tips for each section. Okay, let's get into the video. Get your pen, get your paper, start taking notes. Think of this as a slime recipe with no glue, no borax. We're gonna start with kind of some overall tips. A mistake that a lot of people make is not trying super hard their first time taking the ACT, and this is not what you want to do. You want to try really hard your first time because you have to think of this as a baseline. You want to get a baseline for where you are so that you know where you need to improve. The key to a really high score, aside from using these books, is to take it multiple times. Like I said, I unfortunately take it 5 times, but that did result in me getting a 32 as a super score, so in the end, like, it really did come out to be a good thing. If you have a specific college that you're wanting to apply for, and maybe that's why you're taking this ACT, then you definitely want to look up what their like average ACT score is. You don't want to look up their required ACT score because for many colleges that is very low, where they don't have like a required one. You want to look up their average one because that's going to kind of give you, that's where your goal is going to want to be. It's also really important to look up if they take super scores. And just a little vocab, your composite score is the score that you get on that specific test. So if I go and I take the ACT and I get a 30, that's my composite score. Your super score is your highest number in every section of like every section, the highest score that you got across all the ACTs that you took, it takes that, and that is your super score, sorry. And the best thing you can do is use the books, but I know that you might be sitting outside the testing center right now, about to go in at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and that's okay. You do not have time to go buy the books. Just finish watching this video, and then if you end up taking again, buy the books. Also, if you end up taking again, make sure to pay for your answers from the test that you just took. Yes, you can do that. You can pay, I think it's like $10. It's really cheap to get all of your answers back from the previous test so you can see exactly which questions you missed. They do repeat questions because when they redid the ACT, they had to create all of these new tests, and they didn't have a huge library of test questions like they have in the past. So a lot of the times the questions are going to be repeated, especially in the math section. Okay, now let's speed through the tips that I have for the English. English is always going to be the first section that you're going to have on the ACT. They're going to try to trick you with what sounds right sometimes. And this is really important to note because a lot of the times when you're doing grammatical problems, you think about what will sound correct, but really you need to go with what you know. So if you know something is grammatically correct, but it might not sound correct, I promise it is correct. And while you should be saying it aloud and you should be kind of pronouncing it, at least that's what the book advises you to do, obviously it needs to make sense in context, but that's also how they can trick you, is by putting an answer that sounds right but isn't necessarily right grammatically. So last thing to keep in mind is when they redid the test, now I took the old test and I also took the new test. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you probably are only taking the new test. Something that's different, notice that the English section is way more heavy in comprehension and syntax than it is in grammar. There's still a lot of grammar in there, but rather than a bunch of simple grammar questions, there's gonna be more questions that are almost kind of like the reading section, if that makes sense. Okay, now let's move on to section 2, which is the math section. Please, please, please come with a charged calculator. Every question can be solved without a calculator. However, you should not bring a calculator. I have a hard time finishing all of the problems when I have a calculator with me, let alone when I don't have one. I use this one. It's a graphing calculator. I love it. This one is also pretty good. It can't do as much as this one. My recommendation is whatever calculator you use in math class is the one that you should bring to the ACT. This calculator is really fancy and it's really great, but if you borrow a friend's graphing calculator and you aren't used to using one and you don't understand how the functions work, it's going to slow you down. You can bring both calculators, but you can only have one on your desk. If you're wondering why on earth anyone would bring both calculators, really weird. And this is my reasoning for this. I don't know what other people's is. But if there's a problem where you have to convert a square root, which there probably will be, this one does not do that. I don't know why, This one does it perfectly on command. You just hit like this little button here and it will convert it. The other one doesn't do that. So, okay, enough about calculators. It is really important to keep in mind that every question on the math section is worth 1 point. If you immediately do not know how to solve it, if you're looking at a problem in the first 5 seconds, you don't know how to solve it, move on. You need to go to the next question immediately. You need to have seen all of the questions on the test before you go back and do the ones that you didn't know how to solve. The next thing that I'm going to tell you, if you don't know the answer, let's say it's like a solving for X type problem. If you don't know the answer and you don't know how to solve for it, a single question is going to be multiple choice. So there's usually only 4 or 5 options. Just plug in the options. Literally just plug them all in and then see which ones work, see which ones don't work. And that is sometimes a more efficient way to get your answer, unless you obviously know how to solve it and then you can just solve it. But if you don't know how to solve it, or you solve it and then you get the wrong answer, just plug in the answers, and that works for graphs too. Okay, you just finished the math portion, and guess what time it is? It's break time. You don't know, you can bring a snack and like a drink, but you have to put it in like a little bag or something. You can get it out during break time. Typically, they'll send you into the hallway with all the other kids that are at the testing center, so you can talk to your peers. You can't get on your phone though. That does not happen until after the testing. Break time lasts for about 10 minutes. This is when you're going to guzzle that mini Red Bull that you brought. You're also going to go to the bathroom. The last thing that you want is you have to pee during the reading or science section. If you're wondering like what snacks to bring, any snack you're gonna be excited about. If you really love goldfish, bring a bag of goldfish, okay? If that's gonna be your mental pick-me-up, because the ACT is a test, this is all about mentality. If goldfish is gonna be your mental pick-me-up, then bring that goldfish and then eat it. Okay, so reading. The first thing to keep in mind, every single answer on the reading portion is from the text. Either it's hard to find, whether it's easy to find, it's going to be in the text. So if you get to the end of the reading passage and you still have extra time and you were unsure about a question, go back, try to find it in the text. It will be there, I promise. It might take some extra reading, it will be there. Next, this is going to be very similar to math. Don't be afraid to skip around. You're going to get four like articles. You're gonna get a fiction, you're gonna get a science one, a history one, and then a comparison one. I find the fiction and the comparison to be the easiest. I usually start with those and then I go and I answer the questions on them, because you don't want to run out of time on a passage that you are really good at answering. Okay, these last couple of ones I think actually came from the book, but they're actually super helpful. While you're reading, you should circle, you should underline, you should do really slight annotations. This isn't necessarily so that you can go back and look at it later, but when you annotate, you subconsciously are going to remember things better. So you want to underline dates, you want to highlight people, little like you could draw a little thing on the side and like kind of summarize really quickly what's going on in the passage. Nothing that's going to take you more than a couple seconds. Definitely helps comprehension and just remembering what's going on in the passage. Another thing that is insanely helpful, reading half of the passage and then going over and answering the questions up until you get to the point where you don't know any of the answers. This is really helpful, because the biggest issue that I've experienced with the reading section is that it's really, really hard to answer questions about a passage when you don't remember all the details. Reading half the passage and then going and answering the questions, and then going back and reading the other half of the passage and answering the other half of the questions is super helpful. It is here, the last section, the science section. I took the science section once or twice. I might not be committed to science, but I'm committed to this video. So I went through some of the tips in the science section. I'm still gonna give you guys tips. Science is optional now, if you didn't know this. If you are going into a STEM major, or you might want to go into a STEM major, I would take the science section. It is going to help you in college. They don't wanna see your ACT score, but you didn't even do science, but you wanna go take a science major, like that gets kind of sticky. Or if you're really good at science and you think that it will help your score, then take the science. Now, if you really need to get your science score up, I would go watch someone else's video on this, but there are some tips that came from the book that I'm gonna relay to you. So as far as the science section goes, you don't actually have to know science. You just have to be able to interpret data. The book mentioned how there's 3 passage types. There's data representation, which is like charts and graphs. There's research summaries, which is experiments, and conflicting viewpoints, where they're just comparing hypotheses. In the data like representation part, you should not skim it how you might in like reading or like something else, because that's just not the approach that you want to take in science, because it gets a lot more nitty-gritty, a lot more specific as far as what the questions are asking. If I talk anymore, I will be giving you bad advice. So I'm gonna end the science section there. Overall, the ACT is about time management, strategy, and in cases like math and English, knowing the information. Always remember to look at every question on the test, and if you haven't, when there's about 1 minute left, 2 minutes left, you need to pick a letter and just fill out every single bubble. Statistically, you're more likely to get more right if you fill them out really consistently rather than if you just fill them out willy-nilly. I hope these tips were super helpful for you guys, and if you go in and you don't get the score you were hoping for, then buy your answers, buy those books, and then schedule another date so that you can really be prepared and get a better score. And I wish you guys all the best of luck. Good luck on those ACTs.